if we were to simply ask animals, it doesn't really matter the species, what is the best thing for me to do right now? Number one, you'd get an answer. And number two, it probably would be if we were to judge the correct answer or the right answer. Um,
Hello and welcome to Holistic Circle Podcast Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy. And from wonderful Colorado, here with me today, Lizanne Flynn. Hello, Lizanne.
Hello, Phil.
Hello and welcome. This is the second podcast this year where I got my introduction right. So things are looking up. Exactly.
Yay.
I usually like to start with to invite my guests with a small introduction so that the viewers get to know you, what you do, and what's your background. Let's start from there, and then I'll answer the quick question we had before. Why is it always the same three states? Please go ahead.
Absolutely. This is actually my second career. My first career was in human resources in healthcare. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Management. And in 1993, my body was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis. And while it's not immediately terminal, it certainly was a point of clarification, I think, for me of what was I doing professionally, how my life was going personally. And it seemed to be one of those shamanic initiations, if you will, of what do you want to do, as Mary Oliver would say, with your one wild and precious life. I took some time off of work. I raised my two boys who are now in their 30s and absolutely delightful men. And I was looking to get back into working. And I thought, what can I do to challenge my body to the point that I thought might be applicable in getting back into the workforce? So, for whatever reason, that equaled volunteering at my local animal shelter. And they had a program where you could take two dogs at a time out for a walk along a really lovely green belt here in Colorado. It was a win for the dogs. A lot of them get kennel craze, as it's referred to, and get feeling cooped up. And when I started walking the dogs, I became aware that I was able to hear them. That was the first, probably, flare, if you want to refer to that, that came through. I would hear things like, why am I here? Where's my family? I don't understand. Why am I not home? And as you might imagine, for all the empaths out there listening, that was a steep climb to begin with. And I learned pretty quickly that I needed to put myself to the side and put the animals and then ultimately their guardians kind of front and center so that I could honor the message and so that I could continue to be of service. Animal communication was the first professional shingle, if you will, that I hung out for myself. I wanted to add a physical component to that. So I got certified in canine massage therapy here in Colorado. That was in 2008, I think. I became a Reiki master teacher in 2010. And shamanism, using the tools of shamanism, such as journeying and soul retrieval for both animals as well as humans, was the last, I shouldn't say the last, because who knows what the universe has in mind, was probably the latest to come in as far as a set of tools to use goes. And that was in probably 2012, 2013. I'm also a medium for both animals as well as for humans. And I'm also a medical intuitive. It's easier to say what I don't do, which is astrology. I like to enough about astrology to be dangerous, which is not a lot. Other than that, I facilitate self healing for all earthlings on the planet.
Well, that was, as you said, strong introduction, and as you said, it's short the things that I don't do and the things I do. That is the podcast I like.
Good.
Wonderful. Yes, but there's already like so many questions popping in my head from that introduction. Shamanism is something that is a hot topic right now. A lot of people are opening up to that concept, and I keep hearing it from all kind of especially obviously it's very popular with the young ones. So I have guests, I have all kind of guests from many, many different countries and many different backgrounds. And that's how I want my podcast to be. But I can hear, especially with the young ones, they're just starting up with this kind of line of work. Shamanism seemed to be something that works well for them. That's their entry. So that's definitely where we maybe can spend a couple of minutes. How you define it, how you see it. Do you
Mhm.
think that shamanism is something that comes to you, that is like the universe is teaching you, or going to seminars, going to group? Because I keep hearing young people saying to me, which I find very interesting, is like, I've been here so many lives, had so many reincarnation, and was probably in some past life I got all this knowledge. So for me, it's just opening up that, and I don't need to learn. I don't need to go to any course. I just need to somewhere in my spirit find the knowledge, and voila, I can take off where I left in my past life. And she basically almost said to me, I most likely was enlightened in some past life. So just straight here, I'm starting enlightened. So what would you say to that?
It's so interesting. I'm reminded of the work of both Dolores Cannon as well as Michael Newton. They were hypnotherapists. I don't know about the initials behind their last names. Dolores Cannon, in particular, was a prolific writer who wrote quite a bit about placing humans into hypnotic states and thereby getting information about their past lives and about, as she would call it, the waves of volunteers who come to this planet of experience and experiment. And based on the year, she would posit that you were born, your task, as far as Earth is concerned, is really different. And so, if we were to compare, for instance, boomers with Generation Alpha or those born within the last, what would that be, 20 years or so, there, there's no comparison about what the task is as far as Earth is concerned. I, I would agree with your former interviewee that from my perspective, it's a soul path thing. That soul path is the thing that stitches lifetimes together. And soul path to me is if I can come close to replicating and to being in my soul path in any given lifetime, I'm doing pretty well. And I would agree that soul path is what calls us lifetime after lifetime to be someone who facilitates healings for others. It took me a while, Phil, actually, to come to the title that I hold now, that I named myself, and it was with great reluctance, Master Healer. And the definition, though, I use of healer is someone who holds space for others who are healing. I do not have a magic wand. I cannot say abracadabra and everyone is fixed. I don't perceive that's how healing works. And at the same time, I am aware that amongst, I guess I would say, cultural lineages, there is some sensitivity about appropriation. And the the opinion might be that unless you have done, for instance, ayahuasca, unless you have studied under, per se, a shaman, you're not supposed to call yourself a shaman, which is why I say I use the tools of shamanism, such as journeying and soul retrieval. And I happen to believe that if we were to remove all the parameters that we've created for ourselves as a species, pretty much every human would be a shaman. Pretty much every human would be a being who could facilitate, first and foremost, healing for ourselves, but then certainly for the rest of the planet. And you just have to take a look outside and say, we're not doing such a great job with that.
Why do you think it's so popular, the shaman thing and the new generation? Why does it speak to them? What is it that attracts them? What would be your take?
I would say it's probably the freedom. That's the first word that comes up. The freedom to express and be who they truly were born to be. They have far fewer boxes, if you will, of traditional roles as humans would prescribe for themselves. And so I'm hearing they're more moved by the spirit and they feel more comfortable and more free in expressing that and aligning themselves with their soul path. Um, again, I think it just speaks to them. I think their task is one to elevate the rest of the species because we got pretty bogged down and we're mired in the mud right now. And so these are the individuals whose what I call energetic fingerprint is present to remind the rest of us who we really are.
I have an issue with that, but
Mm,
it's not my point to have it. But I can, yes, I do,
yeah.
and it's the word responsibility, right?
Mm,
Because
mhm,
because
mhm,
shaman, right?
mhm,
Yes, but healing, absolutely, holding space. I'm with you, but we're here. I miss element of responsibility with a lot of the things I'm hearing because
mhm,
it sounds a lot of fun, right? Shaman is, as you said, ayahuasca, whatever, some raw dancing in the night with the fire. It's all
mhm,
wonderful. But healing to me is a very responsible or holding the space for healing and taking someone's hand, guiding him or being there with him in his healing process requires a lot of responsibility. And the word holding space in itself is a very dangerous sentence
mhm.
because you can say, "Oh, I'm just holding space," right? So this is my thing. But wait,
Well, if I could respond, I don't disagree that holding space is kind of bandied about, particularly by humans and particularly these days, of us saying, "Oh, well, I'm going to hold space for you." For me, that's at the opposite end of the spectrum of thoughts and prayers, and we won't get into that perhaps today. When I say I'm holding space, I am actively engaged in embracing where that individual is at this point in their life. And so if it is how humans might see it by comparison, a dark place, a negative place, a place of shadow, I will absolutely stay in that place with that individual, supporting them in however they need to be supported. This, to me, holding space is not a throwaway, in my opinion, thoughts and thoughts and prayers are, or we've come to see thoughts and prayers. I would much rather, if it were me personally, I would much rather have someone say to me, I'm holding space exactly where you are. For instance, on your journey in your journey with MS, my body's had MS for 30 some odd years. There's been ups and downs. For someone to say to me, I'm holding space for that journey with MS, it feels empowering to me. It feels that they are standing shoulder to shoulder with me and they're not going to react negatively and try and get me out of that space because I think energetically, the pendulum has to swing. Energy is always on the move. And just because I'm in a place now where it's not so positive does not mean because of life on this planet and the unified duality that we have, that pendulum is not going to swing to a different place. I have to be where I am right now, though.
I see it more and more. I see the point. I'm starting to get the point. Takes me a while, but let's
What's
see. I have another 50 podcasts to go this year. Maybe I'll make it. Because it is an interesting thing, right? Holding
Mhm.
space to really be respectful with the others, to let them walk the path and this and that. It's a concept that is well established, but there is clearly a line how much connection, right, happening between the healer and the ones seeking. So it is an interesting thing. And I can see that there is a whole new world where the self empowerment has become so strong and the concept of being your own person that that this kind of interconnections is becoming a very tricky subject. So I'm learning as we go along. I'm learning.
Well, it is, and I heard the term a while ago that there's a difference between a traditional shaman and what's referred to as a modern or an urban shaman. And so that, for instance, the young people of today might consider themselves to be more modern or urban shamans, where there isn't necessarily a need or a parameter for having to go through the ceremonial steps of becoming a shaman. They are more willing to simply claim that for themselves and say, I am a shaman. I asked the universe that question a while ago. And before I could even get the question out in my head, the question was, am I a shaman? And immediately the answer was, you were born a shaman. And so, full circle, I think the more humans would really, it's almost like using that other 90% of our brain that we allegedly don't use. If more humans would understand our empowerment as a species on this planet, everybody would be in a better place.
Yeah. Let's leave it here. I'm just saying I'm going to make quite a lot of podcasts this year about initiation.
Oh,
I'm going to get all kind of different people,
okay.
professors, academics, all kind of people from crazy Freemasons and you name it. And we're going to talk about initiation and the value of it in the modern times, because that is becoming a very important part. Because as you said, right, there used to be a medicine man or whatever you call them in whatever word, like the person holding that knowledge or holding the link to the universe and very clearly looking at the young ones in the village or whatever and picking out the ones who he feel have the talent and have the potential and it's all very natural. It
Mhm.
was always very clear who is the next medicine man and this and that. And bring him slowly, very slowly, painstakingly slowly, cruciatingly slowly half a lifetime slowly to the point where he would give him the light and let him use it. So it was such a process and such a conscious and guarded and protected structure. And
Right.
now basically people think, well, in some past life, in the past 5,000 years, I was enlightened at some point. I just linked back in and here we go. Here I am. And I just wonder if this is a good path forward. And why do I bother you with all of this question? I have a reason why I am so determined to get something from you. Because when we had our meet and greet in the preparation of this podcast, you said something that I have not forgotten all those days. And I keep it in my mind constantly. So there you go. You managed to inspire me. You told about your capability to talk to animals, and we had a couple of conversations, and I think that's going to be the big part of this podcast today. And one of the things that you said, and maybe I'm jumping basically to the end, but what can we do? This is the podcast. You told me about a orca and a baby seal, right? You told me about the story, and it was so fascinating for me. And maybe you want to tell the story, or you want a little bit tell the people you remember. I'm sure you remember what you've told me about when an orca eats a
Oh,
seal, and I asked you what happens with the energy and energy transformation. You said that basically the seal becomes part of the energy of the orca. That there is an energy transformation,
yep.
and it was one of the most beautiful things I've heard in a very long time. And
Oh,
also, I think one gratifying, and it is a great thing to hear. And maybe you would just a little bit tell us about it, and then we circle back to initiation and shaman.
I'm so glad that resonated with you. And I I have a hunch that within your own resonance, or what uh, I refer to it as we have an external sensory system and we also have an internal sensory system, and that it feels like there may have been a leveling out, a neutralizing, uh, although that's not quite the right word, of how you might view what humans call the relationship between predator and prey on the planet. And it is a very it's a very neutral, and it is also a clear way to look at the fixed design of this planet. As much as humans think we're going to change the planet and make it different, et cetera, I don't think that's going to happen. At the same time, we have such a beautiful dynamic on this planet. between all species that if we were just to pay attention to our roles, not only as apex predator, but also prey, because, for instance, we can be killed by a tiger, we can be killed by shark, we can be killed by other predators. But for us, we make it a zero sum game. We say, okay, so if orca is eating the baby seal, then that's really bad for baby seal, and shame on orca for doing that. Orca and seal don't look at it that way. Orca looks at it as gratitude to seal or a fish or whatever that being might be. Thank you for nurturing me. Thank you for offering yourself to me. And Steele conversely says, thank you, Orca, for making sure that the numbers within my family group, my herd, my species, stay at a level that, first and foremost, don't overwhelm the planet and available resources. What a concept. And secondly, that it keeps that herd or that family group as healthy as possible. When you compare the predator of what humans do, we don't hunt the youngest and or the weakest in a herd. We hunt the strongest genetic link, i.e., the male in the herd. And why do we hunt the male in the herd? We hunt the male in the herd for the tusks, for the antlers, etc., to display, and therefore beat our chest and say, "Oh, look, I am predator." It's not complicated. It's complex. But if you distill it down to that, there is a transference of energy where seal is grateful to become part of orca, and orca is grateful to have consumed seal. It's not dissimilar if to
So
hook up.
I have to
Sorry.
say, I have a sneaky feeling if we would truly understand what you have said right now, this world would be in a better place.
Well, it's moving away from duality into unified duality, which humans, we get stuck at the whole duality thing. It's either good or bad, it's either positive or negative, etc. And again, that's just not life on this planet. It's a full cycle. All you have to do is look out your window and watch the seasons and watch what happens to the plants, the fauna, the hibernation that happens, the migration of birds that happens. Nobody stays in one place. It's constantly moving. And for humans, we want to be able to control it, the C word. We want to be able to control that energy because I perceive biologically that activates our mostly prey status when we want to feel like we're a victim. And it allows us to forget perhaps our predator status, which we don't like to face because, again, right now, we're not being very good predators.
Yes. I, I'm absolutely with you. This black and white, this whole duality stuff is really such a drag on our existence. And this knowledge that you get, this is the knowledge that you get from communicating with animals, from being able to see things that most of us cannot see. So let's use this time now a little bit before we circle back and tell us about its gift. Tell us about your connection with the animals, how you see them. And there's also one thing, I'm again jumping back and forward, but you also fascinated me because you were so clear that the energy of animals, because I asked you, can I be reincarnated as a cat? Because my grandfather has a cat and he treats him like crazy. He's like 200 kilos and, you know, just sleeping all day long. He's the happiest creature on the planet. I can guarantee you. There is no happier creature than my grandfather's cat. And I asked you immediately last time, can I come back as a cat thinking about that? And you said, no, it's a very different kind of energy levels, different kind of heaven, so to say, most likely. So just please, I will not talk now. You tell us a little bit about the heaven for cats and animals and what you learn, the conversations, and I'll shut up now.
Well, and to connect back with Orca once again, there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Humans are really big on knowledge. We're not so great at wisdom for a number of reasons. I was shown once orca, and particularly mother orca, who was pregnant and had in her womb and what fascinated me was that I was shown it looked to be like if you're familiar with lightsaber swords and or like a incandescent rod of light, there was a direct bedding, I guess would probably be the right word to use, of wisdom between mother orca and her calf, so that this calf was born with all of the wisdom from all of the previous generations. We talk about Darwin's survival of the fittest. Time and time again, animals have shown themselves to be able to evolve and carry that wisdom forward from generation to generation. Humans, uh, again, we talk a lot about knowledge, but we're not really great at imparting wisdom to, for instance, our successive generations. It's pretty much a trial and error sort of a thing.
Interviewer. Do you think do you think that this is because the animals are naturally connected with the light per se, and we humans have lost this natural connection, or you totally think it's the other way around because we are connected and they are not?
Oh no, it's the former, most definitely. We've, in my opinion, and I'm the messenger for the animals. They don't have systems of belief such as science or even religion. They don't understand when I talk to them about science or religion. I get what's called the Aussie head tilt of just like going to the side, and their response is, what do you mean you need someone to tell you how the earth is? Are you not able to tell that simply by being part of the earth? And my response is, no, humans are not able to tell that. And I think while these systems have informed us, and I would say particularly science, we won't get to religion, it also allows us to build these blinders that prevents us from communing with all the other species on the planet who are far smarter than we are about how to sustain themselves, not only individually, but for instance, in the case of bee, in the case of ant, in the case of what we would consider to be the lowliest of the low, as far as species are concerned, they have community and taking care of each other locked down in ways that I think we can only hope to lock down. And yeah, we were born with it. I think babies are born with it, but we force them out of it. We teach them not to do that.
I'm going to have a couple of podcasts exactly about that subject with people who work with handicapped kids very soon. Because this is I'm on the hunt for, this is now the question that is this whole year going to drive me to understand basically if I am, so to say, reaching enlightenment and reconnect with the light, do I again not anymore be a human, become an animal all over again? This is the thing that I'm trying to understand. Once I reconnect, I become once with the entity. Am I basically again a monkey, right? To re-monkey myself,
Uh-huh.
or as people think, become kind of a god and be able to govern time and space and things like that. And I think it's a fascinating concept because, as you said, when animals are connected with the light and they are part with the universe and they're ones, in our definition, they're enlightened, and in our definition, they're gods, right? I mean, they
Well, I would say for some people, they would say that the animal is enlightened and the animal is God. From the animal's point of view, that's a layering on of human parameters onto the animal experience, right? I'm hearing it's almost like we're trying to shoehorn our structure into their reality. Because the bottom line is we're human animals. Just a monkey is a primate animal. A tiger or a lion might be a feline animal with many different layers of a species, of a physical body type, et cetera, et cetera. Yet they have a collective awareness that we do not. They have a collective awareness of, okay, we're all living in unified duality. And what do we need to do to get along in unified duality? We need balance and partnership. And so it's not about a Maslow's hierarchy of needs and reaching enlightenment. I would push back and say there is no enlightenment. other than the moment in which you are right now. There's to a certain extent, I think humans, we're forever trying to build escape pods to get off the planet. Because we have issues with the duality. We want it to be all flowers and sunshine and things like that. And that's not life on this planet. I think rather than seeking enlightenment, we would be far better served to understand how to balance and partner with what is, because that's actually where anything approaching enlightenment by our definition would probably be found.
This is fascinating because as you can talk to animals, you can of course communicate. To give it a couple of seconds to explain. Very simple.
Mm.
You're talking to a monkey. Is it like you're talking in English? Is it like you're hearing
Oh,
it, or you just
mhm.
feel it? Just make the simple talking to animals for dummies.
Gotcha. 101. It goes back to the internal sensory system that is a 100% mirror for the external sensory system. There's clairvoyance, which is clear seeing, clairaudience, which is clear hearing, clairsentience, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, I've learned to trust that the animals know which dialect, if you will, of the language of energy is the one that my body is most attuned to. For some people, it will be clairvoyance and they will see things. For other people, it might be clear audience and it will feel like there's a little mini speaker inside your ear, only it's not your voice. So it's very different than you talking to yourself. For some people, it's their dialect, if you will, is clairsentience, to where their body will feel what the animal, for instance, if we're talking about companion animals, AKA pets, I would encourage your listeners, your viewers to stay away from pets simply by definition and to stay away from owners and maybe go in the direction of guardians, which actually feels more appropriate to me. So if I'm in a session with animal communication, that animal is going to look at my body as a receiver of information, and it's going to know automatically which dialect, if you will, of energy is going to get their point across in the best way. I might see a visual of, I don't know, food that they like to eat. I might feel where they've had a previous injury. I might hear that the reason why they're not using the litter box uh, as they should be is because their guardian got a new job or is spending more time at work, which is causing the cat, if you will, to become stressed because they're not getting the time with their guardian that they need. I'm just along for the ride. I let them do the driving and I choose to, and it's an active choice to follow their lead. And I trust that they're going to give me the information that I need in order to help the guardian understand that the behavior issue that the guardian contacted me for is probably 80 to 85% part of the guardian's doing to begin with.
Right? And how specific can it get? I mean, can you give us some example? I mean, how?
For sure. Just the other day, I was working with a lovely woman. She's had a series of transitions, i.e., deaths of her companion animals in a short period of time. And she is currently facing the more than likely euthanasia of yet another beloved animal companion. She has kept the cremains or the urns, the containers, if you will, like a lot of us do of our companion animals with her. Only in her case, she's kept them in her bedroom. And she currently has a romantic partner in her life. The message very clearly from the cats was, we would appreciate it if you would move us out of the bedroom. It's just too much information for us to have right now. They don't, they did not want to be present for everything that happened in the bedroom, if you will. That's happened a couple of times. So from the human's perspective, it may feel like I am maybe violating boundaries and or norms that I wouldn't necessarily bring up of, are your animals in your bedroom with you while you have relations with your partner? That would not be normally a question that would come up. But Animals, they simply won't hesitate to bring up anything that, number one, makes it easier for them and their connection with their guardian, whether they're in the present or not. Another example would be
Here we talk about a dead cat. So you here had a communication with a diseased cat, basically with her
yeah,
spirit. Is that correct?
yes. And if we go back to soul contract or soul connections as being the thread that kind of stitches lifetimes together, um, uh, the transition, if you will, of the physical vehicle that's connected to the planet. Again, fixed design on this planet. We're born young, we all grow old, and then the body, it's the soul connection and that soul contract that the animals are most concerned with, simply because they know that the physical is so fleeting.
Contract, can you be a bit more precise?
Soul contract, Phil, it would be, have you ever met someone and in an instant you felt, oh, I know you. I've not met you before, but I already know you. It will be a very fast little, oh, I think I've met you before, but you haven't really, at least not in Earth time and Earth dimension. And so that's usually a case of knowing that individual, their spirit, their soul, their essence, their energy, whatever you want to call it, in another lifetime and in another setting. But this that soul contract, that agreement, if you will, to experience either another lifetime, another portion of a lifetime, 5 minutes, 5 months, 5 years, 50 years, etcetera, that's determined by soul awareness and particularly for animals, how much awareness they can gain in a lifetime and how much awareness they can mirror for their guardian in a lifetime. That's pretty much what they're focused on.
You said that basically, did I understand this correctly? That more or less that the animals have their light or their part where they go, and the humans have theirs, and that usually humans, as I can't become my grandfather's cat, but can a cat become a mouse? Is it like within the animal species? Can
Mhm.
a cat be reborn as a mouse, or is a cat always a cat? How do you see that?
And it's so interesting because while you were talking, I was hearing in my head that the kind of collective of cats saying, as if we would be ever interested in coming back as a mouse. They would say, why would we do that? We we like being cats. And of course, the magic about cats is that we haven't domesticated them like we have dogs. And I think that's the allure and the magic of cat that they retain that little bit of wild that resonates with that little bit of wild in us. And that's a really interesting question. For instance, if we go back to orca and seal, because they're
Right.
now
That's what I'm
inserting
asking.
themselves back into the conversation, orca, it's not that the question puzzles them, but there's more of an alignment with not dissimilar to, again, because of the design of this particular planet, orca says, I would always prefer to be orca. I would not ever want to be seal or sea lion, simply because of the relationship between predator and prey. I know that humans are fond of saying, as you might be about your grandfather's cat, oh, I would give anything to come back as a cat, to come back as a dog, that all you have to do is sleep 23 hours a day and I don't have to worry about a job and etc. I would counter that with saying, so you would be willing to give up your liberty? You would be willing to give up your ability to make independent choices for yourself? You would be willing to subject yourself to the care and maintenance of another human, of a human who doesn't even understand, for the most part, how your body functions. And, and I don't think there are very many humans, when you look at the full picture of that, who would be willing to say, "Oh yeah, fine, I'll come back as a mouse rather than a cat." Does that is that kind of making sense? Or
All the things making sense here, but I have to ask.
no, it's good, but again, that's such a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. And it's when, for instance, I'm hearing from gazelle and from cheetah, and cheetah is saying quite clearly, I would always choose to come back as cheetah. For gazelle's part, gazelle says, I don't always have to be on the hunt, pun intended, for something to eat. Gazelle has massive amounts of nutrients available simply by grazing that's readily available to them. But if you pull on that thread, you might hear from the grasses underneath the feet or the hooves of gazelle to say, we don't necessarily like being just out there in the open for gazelle to chomp on. But it's one of those questions where the head of the
Yeah.
snake eats its own tail.
Right. You gave me you gave me the point. Now I have to ask, of course, I'm so sorry, but I must do it. So
No, go
so
ahead.
if you would go through a Zoom, would you maybe talk to the snake? Would you talk to the crocodile? Would you get these kind of information? I mean, it must be the most fascinating place on earth. How would you ever leave a zoo? I mean, if I would be you, most likely I would just put a tent and camp in the zoo, and that's it. Nobody ever will take me out of there.
And it's so interesting. And that's also a great question. As humans, we tend to forget that zoos are a holding place for animals in the wild that we are holding captive in environments that cannot begin to replicate the environment in which not only their ancestral lineage was born, but also an environment in which they can be their best tiger, their best bear, their best snake, their best alligator, crocodile as can be. And so I'm fond of sanctuaries. There's one actually here in Colorado, the Wild Animal Sanctuary. It's the last I heard, it was the largest animal sanctuary in the Western Hemisphere. There are massive amounts of land available. You're lucky, actually, if you get to see a tiger, a lion, etc., up close, simply because it's meant to be a sanctuary, a safe place. Zoos are places where I think I might have gone when my boys were little. It's hard for me to go to zoos at this point simply because of what I would feel and what I would hear of the dissonance between who that animal is, not only on a genetic level, but also on this planet. And we've placed them in a false way so that we can see them. And um, as an aside, I think preservation is a very different thing than conservation. I'm not so sure I'm a fan of conservation. I am a fan of preservation, but um, again, we get stuck to where we think as humans we have to conserve and we have to stop them from moving into extinction, et cetera. But we never ask the question: who's responsible for their environment being degraded? Who is responsible for
I get your point.
I'll tell you this, you probably would not like what you heard in a zoo and or what you
Uh-huh.
felt in a zoo. Just saying.
Well, this comes unfortunately to last question. I'm so sorry it took so much valuable time, but interesting.
It's
But I
okay.
have to back to the beginning.
Mhm.
Would you see the possibility, because I'm hearing this over and over, that your dog, your whatever, could become your shaman teacher? Would you open yourself to that possibility?
Well, I do every single time I interact with not only my own companion animals, but other animal companions. When I say I follow their lead, I absolutely do mean that. I simply step into what feels like to me a different room, an extra room that I have energetically. And I'm not the driver in that room. I am only here to learn, and I'm only here to follow their lead simply because they know much more than I do about what's what in any given situation. So,
But do you feel that that some of those animals, because we're hearing this from ancient cultures, and some of these animals really like act like teacher, that they see your potential and they want to teach you, they want to work with you, they want to give you.
yes, yes, exactly. Yes, every single moment of every single day. If we were to simply ask animals, it doesn't really matter the species, what is the best thing for me to do right now? Number one, you'd get an answer. And number two, it probably would be, if we were to judge the correct answer or the right answer, um, absolutely. Yes. Humans were meant to follow. We're not meant to lead. We're meant to follow. Yeah.
And that leads me to the final question. To your knowledge of animals and understanding of the concept of angels or light creatures, do they understand their existence, or is this not part of their questioning?
They understand angels, light creatures, if you will. And there's a difference. Angels, I'm just going to say it directly. What I'm hearing is something that we've made up as humans, as part of a belief system that is very different than, for instance, galactic beings who, to a certain extent, we all are. We're all visitors here from someplace else in the galaxy. And so there's a difference between a being of light, which they would say we all are, and a belief system of humans somehow trying to come to terms with um, an essence and energy that appears to be extra to them.
Oh, and now it's the real last question. Just quick tell us with which animal you had the so far most interesting and intriguing conversation, better than with my podcast questions. So which just
Oh,
tell us, was it elephant or
mhm.
your dog? Who was your best communication partner so far?
Oh, that would have to be Henry. Henry, as he told me his name was, but again, that was for my benefit so that I could feel this connection with him. Henry was a mountain lion. I got called from clients of mine whose dogs were getting very agitated, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, getting up, running outside, coming back in, acting if they were fearful, getting up, running outside, etc. I used what's called remote viewing, and it felt like a huge mountain lion paw had landed right here on my chest. That was the force of the energy. And in that moment, I was connected with every single other animal on the face of the planet. It remains one of the highlights of this experience so far. Bottom line is that Henry's mother had gotten pregnant again, and she had essentially kicked Henry out to say, do your thing, mountain lions being mostly solitary. And Henry wasn't comfortable enough in following the typical migratory route, which here in Colorado would be up to Wyoming, up further north. And so Henry was contenting himself with being in more rural areas, which is where my clients happen to live. And the female guardian said to me, "Can't you tell Henry just to move along and not bother my dog so much?" Henry's immediate response was, "I was here first." And his second response was, "My advice is to keep your dogs in at night."
This
So
is the best possible podcast ending. Now, everybody who needs your service, I mean, you said it yourself, you do more things than you don't do things. Anyone who has troubles with mountain lions, crocodiles on the porch, this it is such a wonderful. We had so much to talk, and we didn't even scratch the surface. Thank you so very much for this, and all the information will be down from the podcast. Please, if anybody wants to contact you, has troubles with lions.
thank you.
Thank you
It was my
so,
pleasure.
thank you so very much. Thank you.